Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Vijal podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mark Troy, joined here by the founder of Vijal Institute, Adityaberlia. Hi, Adi. How you doing?
Doing well, Mark. It has been a intense week as usual in AI. I seem to say that every week now, right? But it's just been a lot of drama, so we'll talk about that. And we've had some great stuff that's come out this week. So I'm really excited for us going into next week. There's a whole bunch of things teed up for that as well.
That's great. Well, before we get started, a reminder to everybody, check out the Vijal Institute at vjal.ai online. Also, email us at outreach@vijal.ai. We have a wide variety of courses and trainings for everybody from students through CEOs and executives. But let's get started talking about the news of the week, Adi. So a lot has been going on, as you said. Seems like Anthropic, with their Claude, and OpenAI with their ChatGPT are at it again. Who's the best? What's going on?
So, just to recap for everybody, right? We had the big drama with Fable 5, right? It's coming, it's going. They first said deadline A, then deadline B, then July 19th was supposed to be the next deadline. Now a couple of big drama things happened. First, of course, OpenAI's 5.6 Soul extra high, the higher end model, started coming in within touching distance of Fable. We
Mm.
talked about this last time where they kind of made sure that they didn't look as good as them, so they came under the thresholds. But performance-wise, it's been a pretty amazing. But what I think is the real big thing is all the drama that's been going on with that. So you
Yeah.
have Fable, who's of course leading this ecosystem at OpenAI, and one of the big things that he's been doing is he's pretty much crawling the entire world at the same time, Anthropic. And part of that crawling is them constantly resetting all the token usage, right? So it's like, hey, we have an exhibition. Look, first person to whack that button, everybody in the world gets a reset. Oh, we've hit 5 million users. We'll give everyone a reset. Oh, it's like morning and the sun is up. We'll give everyone a reset. So
By reset, you mean free credits, right? Extra tokens or free credits for everybody.
yeah, right. So if you have any of these accounts, right, you have a weekly limit and you
Yeah.
have a 5 hour window and you have a week limit, right? And once you run
Yeah.
out of them, you need more tokens. Now, this has been something which is very, very, I would say, nerve-wracking because thanks to all the new agents and all the new systems, everyone seems to be running out of tokens every 2 days. There's no way to consume all the tokens, but earlier this year, now everyone's out of tokens in 2 weeks, and everybody wants to stay on the subscription plans because the APIs, honestly, are way too expensive to really afford that, right? So this is something that is very, very different, and this is something that is everyone is really thinking about. Um, Token worry, I'm going to lose my tokens and all. Now, what Claude has been saying, at least publicly, hey, the reason we can't give you Fable apart from national security and fear is, oh my God, it's too expensive to run. Oh my God, how will we get everybody on it? And so OpenAI has been trolling them effectively by saying, guys, more tokens. Here's more tokens. Here's more tokens. And we'll give you as many tokens as you want to a point where you could be running 24/7 on a single account and pretty much have done maybe a month or 2 months worth of token works thanks to the resets. It's petty
Okay.
because it is directly aimed at them. And often
Yeah.
Thibault will respond directly. And so, so you have this pettiness on display. And then Claude, of course, finally give up and said, look, everybody gets Fable after July 20th. And, you have these direct interactions happening between them. And I would say at this point, more open AI trolling Claude successfully than the opposite. But this to me, Mark, is a huge, huge, huge moment where, okay, they had to extend Fable 5. And you can see, of course, the people beyond this, in the comments are absolutely right. The big story of the week was the Kimi K3 launch. Now, just to remind people, Kimi K3, this is a Chinese model, a very good Chinese model, and within fighting or shooting distance of Fable 5, Codex super high Sol Max, the ChatGPT #1 model, and way above everything else. Now, this is artificial intelligence doing this, but on benchmarks showing Kimi either at or exceeding Fable 5, particularly in things like front-end design, artifacts, and everything like that. Now, I've been using it pretty much for the last 48 hours, and it is absolutely a top-end SOTA model. And the creators on X have said they're going to open source it. So you have these two very interesting things where you have a Chinese open source model that is completely free, but at the same time, you have Anthropic going to the US government saying, oh my God, these models are too scary. We can't give them to the public. We want more regulation. And when China is saying, hey guys, here's it for free. Take it, love it, use it. There is no restrictions on it. So for this is going to be a very, very interesting next couple of weeks to watch is as you have, ChatGPT was delayed for a week because of the regulatory. And at the same time, you have now a Chinese model hitting that same thing. DeepSeek is saying they're probably going to have another model out next week. Again, open source, free for everybody. And that's going to either be at or exceed Kimi 3, which would put it in a Fable class 5 model. I think that is why you have this entire thing where now everybody has access to Fable 5. And that sort of completely destroys the narrative, which I think Anthropic was trying to push on the safety, on the issues and all of that because quite frankly, all these models are now free for everyone to use. For all of our business customers coming in, try them. They're very good. You can get them hosted in places which you trust. And the cost and tokens are fantastic. And Kimi has some great coding plans, which you can use as well. Their Ultramax one pretty much is intended for teams to share among them. And for the same price, you're getting models from Claude and everybody else that's maybe 10x more expensive. So it was an interesting week, and we're going to see next week all of this sort of unpack as we figure out how the regulators are going to react and how the market's going to price that in.
Super interesting. Just before we finish up on that, you mentioned about trust. I've thought about before, do I trust sending my data to China? I'm kind of the belief that I don't think the Chinese government particularly cares about what I'm working on for business. But I think what you're also saying is Kimi, since it's open source, you can actually have it hosted on your own hardware, or you can pay a cloud provider to host it for you. So then you don't have to worry about it going to some other country. Is that what you're saying?
100%, Mark. And I think, one of the big things that I think people don't quite get with the Chinese models, but the open source ones, that it is open source. So you can read the code, you can read the weights, which is open weight. So you can see exactly what's in there, exactly where the data is going, exactly what's happening, right? So in fact, it's almost more trustworthy than a closed source provider because, if you're an Anthropic or an OpenAI or someone, you're basically relying on trust me, bro, and, third-party certifications. You as a customer cannot actually see what's happening while the open source models you can actually see. But the bigger question is not so much the model, where is it hosted, where the servers are, what are the regulations that apply there, and then are they storing your data, where are they storing it, are they running it? And that's where enterprises get nervous. And I think one of the big things we're seeing now is the openness of enterprises to say, look, we want our own models. It's too expensive to build them. But hey, let's take the Chinese models, add a layer around them, wrap them a little bit, host them ourselves, or in one of the hyperscalers. And so we get that same state-of-the-art performance. But at the same time, we have end-to-end control, our model, the data, everything else. And again, earlier, worried about it being Chinese. I think that's slowly going out the window.
I agree. All right, you've given me the name of my next AI venture. I'm going to call it Trust Me, Bro. Good name. So, next subject, Adi. You're talking about Claude, you're talking about ChatGPT, you're talking about Kimi. These are the brains. Now we're starting to talk about the harness maybe being more important than the brains. Explain to our listeners or our viewers what's the harness? Why might that be as or more important than what LLM you're using, and how do you work with them?
I am going to use one of the new Stanford studies on the harness, etc., to explain this. And before I get in, let me just describe this to you, right? So you have the model, right? And the model is what you and I would, as just general consumer users, log in to use ChatGPT, right? You say, hi, hello, it's a chatbot, goes back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, the model itself is not in a chat, right? It is basically a small software. You send a text, it sends text back to you at a very basic level, right? Now, what tends to happen is, how do I access that text? What do I send? What do I get back? the basic, most simplistic harness is the chatbot, right? It's a little chat screen you have on your screen. That's the one that allows you to upload a file. That's the one that allows you to copy paste, all of that stuff. So the harness is basically the essential platforms at your end, which is interacting with the model, right? And traditionally, the harness that most people have been the chatbot, and even there, people like it or hate it, right? Oh, colors or skinning or copy paste abilities, or whether it shows you a preview or whether it opens it in a new chat, right? All of those are sort of harness issues that you have to deal with. Now, principally, if you look at how harnesses have worked in the past, this is something that all of us have been thinking about is, oh, it's the model quality, right? Whether you run it in a chat GPT online or you run it offline, it's the model quality. But in the last 6 months, the models themselves are extended by the world of agents. They're extended by how we perceive and think about them interacting with our data, our tools, our file systems, local, all of that, right? And so it's not just about the model, it's about how the model interacts with the things we care about. And here's what started to happen is that as people started to create more and more complex platforms at our end to use these models, we started seeing that the model benchmark started to move. And you can see some beautiful numbers here where you have the Meta harness, which is by, of course, Facebook, so they're looking at some of these things. And they're able to take, and let me get you a clean number so you can see that very clearly. They're able to take, let's say, a Claude Opus, and using Claude Code, which is Claude's harness that goes on your computer, the Terminus 2 harness, the Mux harness, the Factory Droid, which is another harness, the Tong agents. These are all different software you can download and run on your computer or on your server that consumes the model. But on this one very simple use of computer terminals, it brought it up to 76.4 just by changing how the platform interacts with the model, how the model interacts with the problem. And Claude Haiku, which is a very small model, was able to go from a 27.5 to a 37.6. These are world-breaking benchmark differences, right? So the same thing, the moment a new Kimi gets launched, the moment a new Claude gets launched, you're going to have all these companies posting, oh my God, look, terminal bench, we are now there. And they compete for 3%, 5%, 6%, right? When what we're seeing is that, the model on its own is doing 58, but combined with a good platform in which you're using and consuming the model, you're now at a 76. So that is a huge differential that comes in. And I think that's where, you're seeing more and more of the competition really happening. For our enterprise customers and for what we talk to people about that, this is something we really want for them to turn around and explore. So in the last podcast, we talked about OMP. We showed some demos of it. And how that is really working. But one of the big ones that you have to see in the harnesses is now the ability to run multiple different models. The advent of heterogeneous AI. We've been talking about heterogeneous AI almost for 2 years now at the Vajal Institute, where we explain to people that, look, what this is going to end up is you're going to use the right model for the right job at the right price. It's no longer about, hey, if you're a Claude shop or if you're a ChatGPT shop or we use Microsoft Copilot, you're going to use all of them where appropriate. And the new thing that the harnesses has sort of come out is that what it said is that, look, you need a platform, you need a system that understands your company's systems, your data, your tools, and then brings in the models to work with them. And because of that custom translation between the model and your ecosystem, even a small model can really, really perform at the highest levels. I'll give you a small example, Mark. One of the things which I love, by the way, to be fair to Claude Code has this as well for their own models. But in something like OMP, most people turn on the advisor mode. So you have one model which is doing the work, which might be a cheaper model. Let's say you are using something like, well, although, perspective given, GLM 5.2, or you're using a Grok 4.5, which is very fast as the operator. And then you're using, as the advisor, a Fable 5 or a Codex Soul Extra High Max, which are very expensive models. And so the advisor sort of monitors what the worker is doing and stops them when they're doing something wrong, or helps them out, or gives them advice on how to do certain things, while the worker is able to go at very high speed and at very cheap price, actually start implementing everything. I mean, that's a small example, but that completely changes the cost. It changes the ability of AI to perform. This double combination of models, thanks to the harness enabling that, brings up the ability to a much higher level as well. And so the big thing that we are now talking to our clients is that, hey, we're not just talking about models, but where are they? How are they using it? What are the harnesses or the platform that they're using to actually deploy them and give them access and to do the work they actually need?
Okay, look, I love this. This is, I think I mentioned earlier that everybody's now saying the tool matters, but maybe the harness matters as much or more. It's not just about solving the question, it's making sure you ask the right question of the right tool. So look forward to doing more of this in Vijal. Good. Thanks, Adi. So seems like everything's coming up roses, right? Everybody is super excited about all these models. So the stock market should be soaring with all this AI news, except it's not. I think the Chinese scared Wall Street yesterday with all their new announcements of super powered things for super cheap. What's going on?
Mark, so a couple of things here, right? So, but we saw this. This is not new, right? We saw this happen a couple of years ago when DeepSeek came out, right? So
Mm.
DeepSeek comes out, they drop the cost of training models, they drop the cost of everything by a huge amount, and suddenly Nvidia price starts to tank. And at that time, people in the AI were like, "That's ridiculous. It's the wrong signals that you're seeing." I think
Yeah,
it's still because the sophistication in connecting the ecosystem dots hasn't quite hit the markets. Now, to be fair, we've had a bit of a crazy run, particularly on semiconductors and memory and all of that. SanDisk, I think, was down at the time of this call, maybe like 30-40% from the June high. So, within 1 month, people kind of went over exuberant and now sort of they're course correcting. So there is a bit of froth, and we've talked about this on this podcast before. But in particular, this reaction to Kimi, the reaction to the kind of numbers that you're seeing, the Fable 5 issues, all of this, is pretty much people not understanding, that the Chinese models coming out actually makes AI a lot better. And I'll walk you through the 2, 3 reasoning why. So let's look back at DeepSeek, right? Now, if you go back, this is talking about maybe January of 2 years ago, or actually last year for the most part, you had all the model companies saying, "Hey, you can't train your own model, right? It costs 100, 200, 300 million per run. There's only going to be 5 or 10 model companies in the world. There's OpenAI, there's ChatGPT, there's a couple of very well-funded multi-billion-dollar labs. Europe has Mistral, the UAE has Falcon, and that's it. And here's Sam Altman going to places like India and saying, guys, don't even bother, right? We'll just give you ours for a lower cost. You'll never catch up. DeepSeek comes out. It does 11 incredible open sourced innovations that crashes the price of training models down to 500,000. And now it's a race of talent. And we've talked about this in the podcast before. It's no longer just training capacity. Now the master batch maker, right? The sommelier, the guy who actually puts all together, that's the $100 million dollar salary, not the compute cost anymore.
yeah.
But when DeepSeek came out, it Sunday broke open the race. Instead of having now 10 model companies, and by the way, the 10 model companies knew exactly how many GPUs they need. They need exactly how much inference, and they'd already given NVIDIA the order book. So it's not like it's new information to either NVIDIA or any one of them. But what DeepSeek triggered off was the next 100 labs being able to now start doing AI seriously, and people starting to enter entry points at 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, 500 million. Guess what? That was great for NVIDIA because now you went from 10 big customers to thousands and thousands of new customers who wanted their chips. And that's where we are stuck in. And you and I had a conversation in the last one about us all wondering about memory and chips and all of that. That was the moment that sort of really pushed up AI. And that's what you're seeing now as well. With the launch of Kimi, with the launch of new things, this isn't saying that the US ecosystem will go down or AI companies are in trouble, China will take over. It's actually fueling more and more innovation to happen, more companies to come in. Even companies who could not compete or who are lagging can now take what the Chinese have done with their open source models, apply them, and they're back in the game. Companies which were sort of no longer at sort of the cutting edge. And there's a whole list of them who are pretty there last year, but haven't been able to keep up with the R&D. All they have to do is see how these open source, open weights models work, copy that in, and guess what? They're back in the game and they can push forward. And that applies for countries across the world. So I think the stock market is not fully connecting how the Chinese systems actually boost the American innovation economy and the rest of the world, of course. But hopefully that sophistication in 3 to 6 months will become evident as they start seeing the numbers, the order books, the announcements. Those will start becoming more and more clear, just as all of us figured out DeepSeek when it just got launched.
Well, look, I recall, I think it was about a year ago when DeepSeek was kind of revealed to the world, and they said, "Hey, we did this for 1/10 the cost and in 1/10 of the time." Stock market went way down the next day. People said, "We're not going to need memory anymore. We're not going to need data centers anymore." And look how we are a year later. That popped back up and went crazy because the demand for the use of AI has just gone through the roof. So
I saw a number. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but something like only 2% or 3% of the US market has an AI subscription on a regular basis. We're just starting off even the consumer story, right? And having a differential number of models catering to different people with different philosophies. We've talked about sovereign AI before here. That just expands the pie, right? This is not a zero-sum game right now that, if you have this, no, now Kimi's here, that means OpenAI is going to lose money. I mean, the pie is going to expand like crazy for the last 5 years, and more players, more distribution, more opportunities. That's what expands the pie.
all right, well, let's see where it goes. Thanks on that. So look, every week you bring us a great demo. I think you said you built something cool with Claude this week. I'd love to see what you've done for us.
I wanted to show you a little bit about how sort of Fable really, really works, right? And some of the interesting things that you can do with it. And this literally was 5 minutes before we talked. I just tossed it in. But in the interest of time, I'll just show you the output. So I took a floor plan, which is just a picture of it, and I use Fable 5 for this. Kimi can also do this. Codex Soul Extra High can also do this really well. And I said, hey, take this floor plan and first turn it into a proper, nice picture artifact. So this is Claude's rendering of the floor plan, pretty accurate with all the systems and all. And then I said, fantastic, using your great abilities of Fable, first do a 3D mockup of it, which it did. And so it started to create the first 3D mockup, fully usable. It's about like 5 minutes. And then I said, hey, let's render it up. And this is what it's actually right now rendering as we're speaking. Still a few things left to go, I suppose. And of course, day, night, full renders what this looked like. Now, you can see it's still kind of glitching up on the corner. This is a 5-minute render on Fable 5. So you can imagine, and this is without any harness, skills, instructions. It's just, and you can try it. You can go and say, here's a floor plan. Please give it full 3D model. And it'll create something pretty similar. You can, of course, upgrade it. This is a complete revolution in terms of how people are able to use these AI tools. Earlier to do this, you'd have to first buy the tool, and there were very few free ones available. You had to understand CAD, you had to understand 3D, you had to understand this. And then every change you had to make manually. In this case, you would just tell Claude, change this, swap out this, etc. there. And of course, there are going to be companies, and there are many of them who do the 3D systems using AI. But I just want to, give a more consumer example about why models like Fable 5 sort of really change the game. And when you have something like a Kimi, which is offering this at 1/10 the cost, where everybody can sort of come up with their own 3D worlds, 3D models, and run this, it completely changes the game. So I thought this was a very cool example of something you all could try. Pick a floor plan, ask for a 3D model, ask it to be upgraded to the next level, and see how far the AI tool you're using can get before it kind of sputters out.
Yeah, so to be clear, if you want to try this at home, everybody, go into Fable 5, by the way. You only have, I think, 24 hours left until maybe they
Oh,
switch to this
they
new
have
plan.
they have extended it now permanently,
Yeah.
thanks to Kimi.
Yeah.
That just happened 5 hours ago.
Okay. So use it and simple prompt. I have this apartment that I want to create a 3D plan for. Here's a rough picture or drawing of it. Help me turn it into a photorealistic 3D model and help me render it and just play with it that way. Great, great, Audi. Well done.
An absolutely
So
beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love that. So we love our demos every week, and finally every week you also regale us with a story of a client success. I think you're going to talk to us about OCR, optical character recognition, and I hate that word because I've used it for 20 years and it doesn't work. So I gave up on it. It's the letters are blurry.
We
So
all
now you're going to try to tell me it works. So go for it.
we all have like I was just going to say we all have like OCR PTSD, right?
Yeah,
From like way back in the day and then continuing forward. So I love this story because it's sort of like the anti-AI, pro-AI story. So we have a very cool client, and these guys are scale, right? They everything they do is hundreds of thousands, millions, right? And one of the big things they do, and thanks to NDAs, I'll be a little bit obtuse on them, but principally think about this: they get a lot of consumers uploading forms, uploading IDs, uploading stuff they figured out to process their applications for various things, right? It's a very classic thing. Banks do it, financial services, insurance, all of this, whole bunch of them do it, right? And so one of the things we were working with them was like, hey guys, we need to make sure we have to check the IDs, we have to make sure the applications are fully functional. Our old OCR systems were never that good. Let's do it using AI. And so they built an entire AI pipeline on this. And we had trained them how to build these pipelines, and they built the pipelines. Now we went in and I said, look, it's working, but it's not working that great. And this is why I love this story, because one of the problems we see constantly is people trying to throw AI at everything and hoping it solves the problem. And often it does, but at a very expensive thing. And so this happened recently last week. We sort of worked with them and figured out, okay, if you were to send all these documents into AI and then figure out what it says, verify, audit, which is really important because they get fined a huge amount of money if they mess this up, right? So it's very worth it for them to have spent that money. But turns out they were burning hundreds of thousands of dollars on tokens just using the AIs to do OCR. And
yeah,
instead, what was we sort of went in and said, you know what you can actually do is you can use the AI to optimize your own OCR systems. And so now what they're able to do is, one, use the highest models only when the OCR can't deal with it, right? There's a mismatch of photo, the way that people have taken a picture, the scan quality is bad. So they save the really expensive models for thing. We then have mid models or lower models for a lot of the work that get the job done 80, 90% of the time, but know how to escalate. But then we went a tier down further, is where we had the models retrain classic software systems to come up with OCRs that are specific only for them, which would cost millions of dollars to do a couple of years ago. But now you have the AI agents who can sort of go in and figure out that, hey, how do I create custom pieces of software, custom OCR systems just for these guys? And so within a week, we are able to take one or two of their use cases and move it completely out of AI and back to just running simple software, right? They just upload it, the software within seconds, no tokens, no costs, no things like that for AI, is able to do a perfect OCR with the ability to then escalate to the AI models that's there. And for me, the reason why I love this story is, AI is not the solution for everything. And I think part of really bringing that into your company is to understanding where are the quick wins? Where is it going to really perform well? Where can it help you get one big leap ahead, but then take a step back and then not be in AI? Where manual is working perfectly. At Vajal, one of the big things we tell people, you don't need to automate everything. If you can do it manually today and it works and it gives you an ROI and you're getting the margin, start with that.
yeah.
Get the quick wins, get it to start working, and then go down that entire route. And for me, so this was a very nice example where they had gone all the way, fully automated, fully done system, fully AI'd, and we actually brought them back out of AI and said, look, your AI can actually help you shave 80% of the cost just by taking the learnings that it had and then bringing it out of AI and doing it at scale.
So you're saying it's accurate, it's quick and easy, and now it's affordable. Great.
Affordable and probably better off, because at the end of the day, now because a large part of what they had to do was customer data. They had to worry about where the data was stored. All that data is back on their servers, being processed by their servers for 95%. And it's only that last 3 to 5% really hard cases where they need to bring in an AI model to help them out.
Great. Well, great success story from a Vijal client. Thank you, Adi. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're here every week. Don't forget to check out the Vijal Institute online at vjal.ai or email us at outreach@vijal.ai. We've got all kinds of great courses and coaching for your employees. Adi, thanks for joining. I'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to see another amazing week in AI. And I look forward to seeing all of you next week to talk about it and see what happened.
Great. Thank you.